All right, more dry, boring note-taking from here in lowly, humble Vinyl Bear Studio in lovely, scenic Paju City, South Korea at, gosh, what is it? 2:21 a.m. And I have here a new stem from my dear friend Brian, who's recovering from a rather prolonged bout of health issues. His voice has been on hiatus, and this is the first thing he's tracked in quite some time. And, well, I'm rather enamored of his voice as it struggles to return. And even though he tracked this on a USB microphone, I'm thinking about rolling up my sleeves and doing something with it. Now, as is often the case with Brian, this stem is fairly quiet. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. I have okay, well, first, you could barely see the waveform. This stem is peaking at around minus 27 dBFS. So its RMS is probably quite a bit lower. But so I set up Console8, channel in and channel out. And in the mix bus, I set up Console8 bus in and bus out. And then I inserted an instance of Voxengo span. Before the Console8 in and out sandwich, I inserted Airwindows BitShiftGain because I would like the cleanest gain boost possible before hitting the Console8 architecture. And, well, now BitShiftGain boosts in increments of roughly 6 dB. So minus 18 dBFS is considered a sweet spot in the digital domain for hitting plugins, especially plugins that are designed to emulate analog gear and systems. But I routinely break that rule. I track stuff at around minus 10, minus 12 all the time, sometimes even hotter. Anyway, the call was, well, do I boost it plus 2 or 12 dB or maybe even plus 3, which would be 18 dB with BitShiftGain. So in order to make a more informed decision, shall we say, I inserted an instance of Melda M oscillator, got a sine wave going, my 5 kilohertz sine wave right here. And even though the RMS is probably a little bit lower, I set it at minus 28 dB, 5 kilohertz. And so what we see here is, here I've got BitShiftGain, and here's span at the end of the chain. And you can see here that we've got a nice second harmonic, or third harmonic rather, at 15 kilohertz. And it's peaking right around minus 51 with just the incipient beginning of a 23 kilohertz spike that that Console8 can and will generate. But it's okay. It's manageable. But I don't want to exacerbate it, right? So first off, look what happens when I boost it at 3 bits in BitShiftGain. That 23 kilohertz spike jumps to, what is that, like minus 74? And the third harmonic spike at 15 jumps from, let's see, what is that? Minus 51 dB right here. It jumps to like minus 34, 35. Which is fine. It's all fine. However, it makes me lean towards boosting by 2 bits rather than 3. Because I have other methods of controlling that third harmonic spike. And I'm also going to be adding a second harmonic spike. And so this is very controllable right here. The second and third harmonic spikes are way more manageable and controllable than the 23 kilohertz spike. But this is the more interesting thing that grabbed my attention here. At a 2-bit or 12 dB boost, notice that my fundamental is sitting here at minus 6 dBFS. Now, if you recall, the sine wave generated by Melda M oscillator is set to minus 28 dBFS. So, minus 28 dB sine wave. I boost by roughly 12 decibels. So, minus 28 plus 12, you would expect to see, what, minus 16? But it's minus 6, that's 10 dB. Where is that 10 dB coming from? Well, obviously it's coming from the Console8 architecture, but 10 dB was a bit surprising to me. I never specifically noticed this before. So I ran it by a Gemini, and these AIs are hit and miss. But when Gemini is on point, it's on point. And here's what Gemini had to say about it. I think Gemini is on point about this. So I'm just going to read through it real quick and leave it at that. Let me see, where is it? Okay, let me drag it up onto the screen here. All right, so I described the situation for it right here. And you can pause that and read it if you like. But the question is basically, one of the questions I'm asking is, why am I saying that gain spike of 10 dB just from Console8? And here's the answer. The 10 dB of phantom gain you are seeing isn't an error. It is a transfer function of the Console8 architecture. 1. Why you are getting that extra 10 dB gain. Console8 is not a passive saturation circuit. It is an active system designed to mimic the gain staging of a console channel path. In the Airwindows ecosystem, the Console8 channel and bus plugins are designed to interact as a closed loop. The channel plugin often contains a slight lift in its processing to account for the signal loss that would occur in a real analog channel strip's components, capacitors, transformers, and the like. When you chain them together, you are cascading those corrective gain stages. Unlike a digital plugin that aims for strict unity gain, Console8 is designed to build the sound as it goes through the channel to bus path. When you hit it with a high RMS signal, like a sine wave, you are pushing the algorithm into a region where it is actively amplifying the signal as part of its console simulation. 2. The nonlinear harmonic jump. The reason your third harmonic is jumping 16 dB while your input only increased 6 dB is the defining characteristic of nonlinear saturation. The curve saturation algorithms don't act in a straight line. They follow a curve, often a hyperbolic tangent or similar function. The weight. As you push the input level, the slope of the saturation curve steepens. You aren't just adding more of the same distortion, you are effectively hitting the ceiling of the plugin's internal virtual headroom. The closer you get to that ceiling, the more aggressive the harmonic generation becomes. This is the exact friction you like. This is kind of self-referential to my chat with Gemini, the word friction. If the harmonic increase were linear, it wouldn't sound like a console. It would sound like a simple clipper or a fuzz box. The fact that it jumps so aggressively is why it feels glued and weighted. If you are triggering a more complex reaction from the DSP as the level increases. And then it talks about the 23 kilohertz spike and how that is an aliasing artifact, fold-back aliasing. And I don't really need to go into that. But my strategy here is going to be boosting plus 2 bits in BitShiftGain, 12 dB, and then performing further gain staging within the Console8 channel in and channel out sandwich, quote unquote. But I just thought, I saw that and I thought, that would make a good video title. Where is it? The fact that it jumps so aggressively is why it feels glued and weighted. That's why I like Console8. That glued and weighted quality of it. That occurs without anything else. There's nothing else. This is only with the Console8, the raw Console8 architecture in place. And I'm actually seeing that non-linearity, that glued and weighted quality in a 10 dB sort of intrinsic boost where there's not a single other plugin in the chain. And it's something that I can really, really not only hear but feel across a project, especially. But this is just one stem through the raw Console8 architecture. There's not even any bus. Well, no. If you have buses, then you're using Console8 sub in and sub out. And every time you have, a bus or an aux track on the way to the mix bus with Console8 sub in and sub out, you're adding to this cumulative nonlinear summing mojo of Console8. And I've had people ask me, what is it about Console8? What about Console9? What about this, that, the other? This is why I love Console8. So I don't know why it took me almost 15 minutes to lay this out, but windbag that I am, there it is. Thank you for watching, and I hope this is edifying and enlightening to someone else for whatever the heck it's worth. I hope this video finds you well, and may the winds of clarity blow ever in your favor. Over and out.